The spaceship called Horizon's Edge came out of hyperspace near a strange solar system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge and watched the alien structure growing bigger on the screen. It was huge, orbiting around the fourth planet like a small moon made of metal and crystal. 3 years of planning had brought them to this moment. This was humanity's first real meeting with the Corvan Empire, a powerful alien civilization that had ruled this part of space for thousands of years. Commander Lisa Grant checked the files about Corvan culture one more time. The Corvan were warriors, built like walking mountains. They had black scales covering their bodies and eyes that glowed like melted gold. They respected only one thing above all else, and that was strength. The Earth team had been told exactly how to behave. They were supposed to bow down and accept being ruled by the Corvan if they wanted Earth to survive. Jake hated everything about those instructions. He read them and felt sick. But orders were orders, and he was a soldier before anything else. The shuttle landed in a massive bay that opened into an arena. The place was carved from dark metal that seemed to drink in light. Thousands of Corvan filled the seats above them, row after row of huge alien warriors. Their presence made the air feel heavy and hard to breathe. In the center of the arena stood the biggest Corvan Jake had ever seen. This was Alpha Commander Thrace, leader of all Corvan military forces. He was 12 feet tall, with muscles like steel cables under his scales. Scars covered his chest and arms like a map showing every battle he had ever won. Ambassador Peter Wallace led the human group forward. His uniform was perfect, despite the terrible heat inside the arena. Behind him walked Jake, Lisa, and 6 Marines who looked like children next to the alien guards lining their path. The plan was simple and clear. They would bow, accept Corvan rule, and make sure Earth survived in a dangerous galaxy full of species that wanted to destroy anything weak. Thrace's voice filled the arena like thunder. Technology made it louder, but Jake knew the alien commander probably did not need any help being heard. Humans, we have studied your species. You are weak. Your ships are primitive. Your worlds are few in number. You will kneel before the Corvan Empire and accept your place beneath our claws. Peter stepped forward to give the speech he had practiced 100 times. But Jake's hand shot out and grabbed the ambassador's shoulder. Peter turned with confusion and surprise on his face. He saw something in Jake's eyes that made him stop moving, something dangerous and determined. Jake stepped past the ambassador and walked alone toward the giant alien commander. The entire arena went silent. Every Corvan warrior leaned forward in their seat, curious about this tiny human who walked without fear toward their greatest champion. Thrace looked down at Jake with an expression that mixed amusement and contempt. He raised one massive hand with claws as long as knives and pointed at the ground in front of him. His voice was quieter now, but still carried to every corner of the arena. "Kneel, human." Jake stopped 3 steps away from the alien. He looked up and met those burning golden eyes without fear or hesitation. Slowly and deliberately, a smile spread across his face. It was not a friendly smile or a nervous smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just realized his opponent had made a terrible mistake by underestimating him. "I only kneel," Jake said quietly, but his voice somehow carried in the sudden silence, "to strike you down." The arena exploded with noise. Corvan warriors roared in outrage. Some stood from their seats. Others slammed their fists against the armrests of their chairs. The sound was deafening, like standing inside an avalanche. But Thrace did not look angry. His eyes widened, not with fear, but with something humanity had not expected to find here. It was respect, mixed with fury and excitement. The Alpha Commander threw back his massive head and laughed. The sound rolled across the arena like thunder over mountains. It was genuine laughter, not mocking, but impressed. "Then you will die like a warrior," Thrace declared loudly so everyone could hear, "instead of living like a slave. Your challenge is accepted, human. Peter grabbed for Jake's arm in panic, but the captain shook him off easily. This was no longer about diplomacy or careful planning. Jake had just committed Earth to a completely different kind of first contact. There was no going back now. The Corvin did not respect weak species that begged for mercy. They respected only strength and courage. Jake was about to show them exactly what kind of species humanity really was. Lisa stood frozen in shock. She had spent 3 years preparing diplomatic solutions and peaceful negotiations. Now Jake had thrown all of that away in 10 seconds. But as she watched the Corvin warriors settle back into their seats with excited expressions, she began to understand. These aliens did not want diplomats. They wanted warriors worthy of respect. The Corvin guards surrounded the human group and began leading them to different areas. Jake would be taken to a preparation chamber beneath the arena. The others would be escorted to an observation area where they could watch what happened next. Peter tried to argue, but the guards ignored him completely. In Corvin culture, once a challenge was issued and accepted, nothing could stop it. The law was absolute. Jake walked calmly between his guards, his mind already working through strategies and possibilities. He had just challenged the greatest warrior in an empire that had conquered thousands of worlds. Common sense said he had no chance of winning. The Corvin were stronger, faster, and more experienced in combat than any human. But Jake had not spent 8 years in the Marines without learning a few things about fighting opponents bigger and stronger than himself. The key was not to fight fair. The key was to fight smart. Thrace watched the human being led away and felt something he had not felt in decades. Excitement. Real excitement about a coming battle. Most challenges were boring formalities. Weak species champions who lasted less than a minute before dying or surrendering. But this human had looked at him without fear. This human had smiled and made a threat that suggested he actually believed he could win. The Alpha Commander turned to his second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Cross. "What do you think?" Cross growled low in his throat. "I think he is either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. He will die quickly." Thrace shook his massive head slowly. "No, I do not think so. Did you see his eyes? That was not the look of someone accepting death. That was the look of someone who has a plan. This will be interesting." In the preparation chamber deep below the arena, Jake stripped off his uniform jacket and began stretching his muscles. He had perhaps an hour before the fight began. 1 hour to prepare for a battle that would decide whether humanity became slaves or earned a chance at something better. Lisa was allowed into the chamber, despite protests from the guards. She looked at Jake with a mixture of anger and worry. "You insane fool. Do you have any idea what you have done? Thrace has killed champions from 17 different species. He has fought in wars older than human civilization. What were you thinking?" Jake tested his range of motion, rolling his shoulders and stretching his legs. "I was thinking they were going to make us slaves either way. At least this way we die standing up instead of on our knees." "You're going to die in about 3 minutes once that fight starts," Peter said, having pushed his way past the guards as well. "The Corvin are 7 times stronger than humans. Their bones are dense like metal. Their reflexes are faster than ours. Thrace is the best fighter they have. This is not brave. This is suicide." Jake looked at both of them, and his expression became serious. "Maybe you are right. Maybe I have no chance. But I would rather take that chance than spend the rest of my life knowing I bowed down without even trying to stand up. Earth deserves better than that. Humanity deserves better than that." The chamber door opened, and a Corvin attendant entered carrying weapons. The weapons were spread out on a metal table. Energy blades that hummed with power. Plasma rifles that could burn through steel. Kinetic hammers heavy enough to crush stone. Jake studied each one carefully while the Corvin attendant watched with barely hidden contempt. Finally, Jake picked up something that made Lisa's breath catch in her throat. It was a simple metal staff, weighted at both ends. Nothing fancy or high-tech, just a stick. "That is it?" the attendant growled in broken English. "You face Alpha with stick?" "Just open the gate," Jake replied calmly. The roar of the crowd hit like a physical wave when Jake walked into the arena. The lighting had changed, focused now on the combat circle at the center. Thrace waited there wearing minimal armor that showed off his massive, muscled body and all the scars he had collected over hundreds of years. He held a war blade that looked like it could cut a car in half. The weapon was as long as Jake was tall. A Corvan elder stood at the edge of the circle and announced the rules in a voice that reached every corner of the massive space. Single combat. No interference from outside. No mercy expected. Victory comes through death, submission, or when one fighter cannot continue. The winner's people shall have higher status than the loser's people for 1 generation. Jake spun the staff in his hands, getting a feel for its weight and balance. He had trained in stick fighting during his Marine years, not because it was a modern weapon, but because the principles applied to any long weapon. He was fast and trained and motivated to survive. But looking at Thrace, he knew Lisa was right. In a straight fight, he would lose in seconds. His only chance was to not fight straight. Thrace raised his blade in a salute that showed respect. Jake had not expected that gesture. The captain returned it with his staff. Then the elder's hand dropped, and the fight began. Thrace moved with terrifying speed for something so large. He closed the distance in 3 huge steps. His blade came down in an arc that would have split Jake from shoulder to hip if it connected. But the human was already moving. He dropped into a slide that carried him beneath the swing, under Thrace's guard. The staff lashed out and cracked hard against the alien's knee with all of Jake's momentum behind the strike. The blow would have shattered a human kneecap into pieces. Against Corvan bone, it barely made Thrace stumble. But that moment of imbalance was enough. Jake rolled to his feet and drove the staff's end into a nerve cluster at Thrace's side. It was a weak point Lisa had found in the cultural briefings, mentioned as a place where Corvan armor always needed extra padding. Thrace roared, more surprised than hurt, and spun with his blade horizontal. Jake went low again, the weapon passing inches above his head, close enough that he felt the wind of its passage. The staff found another target, this time the inside of Thrace's elbow. The alien's grip on his weapon loosened for just a moment. The crowd's roar changed pitch and tone. They had expected the human to either charge stupidly or try to run away. Instead, they were watching something none of them had seen before. A prey species was fighting like a predator, using speed and precision to counter overwhelming strength. Jake kept moving constantly, never staying still, never trying to match power with power. He struck at joints and nerve points and the gaps in Thrace's natural armor. Each blow alone did minimal damage, but they added up. The Alpha commander was bleeding from a dozen small cuts. His movements were becoming slightly slower, his reactions delayed by fractions of seconds. But Jake was getting tired much faster. His breath came in gasps. His muscles screamed from the constant motion. Thrace's blade caught the edge of his armor and tore it away, leaving a burning line of pain across his ribs. The human stumbled, and the crowd sensed the kill was coming soon. Thrace pressed forward with his blade raised for the finishing blow. Jake was against the arena wall with nowhere left to run. The Corvan champion moved in for the kill, and Jake did something no Corvan warrior would ever expect or even think possible. He threw his weapon directly at Thrace's face. The staff struck the Alpha commander between the eyes. It did not hit hard enough to cause real damage, but it made him flinch instinctively. In that split second of reaction, Jake closed the distance faster than he had moved during the entire fight. He got inside the reach of that massive blade where it could not be used effectively. His fist struck once, twice, 3 times at the nerve cluster that controlled Corvan breathing. It was another detail from the medical briefings that Lisa had made everyone memorize. Thrace's breath hitched and caught in his throat. His eyes went wide with shock, and Jake swept the alien's legs out from under him using a move he had learned in hand-to-hand combat training years ago. The Alpha Commander crashed to the ground hard. The impact shook the arena floor. Before Thrace could recover, Jake was on him with one arm locked around the alien's throat in a chokehold. It would be impossible to break with strength alone because of the angle and leverage. The human's legs wrapped around Thrace's torso, and every muscle in Jake's body strained to maintain the hold. "Submit!" Jake gasped into Thrace's ear, barely able to speak through his exhaustion. "Or pass out. Your choice." For 10 seconds, the arena was completely silent. 50,000 Corvan warriors held their breath. Thrace's hand reached for Jake's arm, strong enough to break every bone in the human's body. But something stopped him. The grip tightened and loosened as Thrace struggled with the decision. Then his other hand slapped the ground 3 times, the signal of submission. Jake released the hold immediately and rolled away. He could barely stand. His legs shook and his vision swam with spots. Thrace lay on the arena floor gasping for air that his body had been denied. His pride was wounded far worse than his body. The crowd had gone completely silent as thousands of warriors tried to process what they had just witnessed. The human had won. An elder rushed forward to confirm what everyone had seen. He checked Thrace, then looked at Jake, then announced in a stunned voice, "Victory to the human. Alpha Commander Thrace has submitted." The arena stayed silent for another moment. Then one Corvan in the upper seats began to pound his fist against the armrest of his chair. Then another joined. Then 10 more. Then hundreds. The sound built like an approaching storm until the entire arena was filled with the rhythmic pounding. It was not the sound of anger or outrage. It was the sound of respect. Jake helped Thrace stand up, which was probably stupid given how much bigger the alien was. But it seemed like the right thing to do. The Alpha Commander looked down at the tiny human who had just defeated him, and something changed in those golden eyes. The contempt was gone, replaced by genuine respect. "You fight with wisdom," Thrace said quietly so only Jake could hear. "That is rare. That is valuable. We will speak again soon, human." Guards escorted Jake back to the preparation chamber where Lisa and Peter waited. The ambassador looked like he had aged 10 years in the last hour. Lisa grabbed Jake in a hug that probably hurt his bruised ribs, but he did not complain. "That was the stupidest, most reckless, most insane thing I have ever seen anyone do," she said into his shoulder. "And it worked." Peter sank into a chair and put his head in his hands. "What happens now? We humiliated their champion in front of their entire military leadership. They could execute us. They could attack Earth. We have no idea how they will react." Jake accepted water from one of the Marines and drank deeply before answering. "They will react the way warriors react when they meet other warriors. They will respect us. Maybe for the first time, they will actually respect humanity. Or they will kill us for embarrassing them," Peter countered. "Maybe," Jake admitted, "but I would rather die having shown them what humans can do than live as their slaves knowing we never even tried." Hours passed in tense silence. The humans stayed in their assigned quarters with Corvan soldiers guarding the doors. The guards looked at Jake differently now, with expressions somewhere between hostility and fascination. Word of the fight had spread through the entire station. A human had defeated Alpha Commander Thrace in single combat. No one knew what would happen next. Peter paced back and forth across the room for what felt like the 100th time. His footsteps were the only sound in the chamber. Finally, he stopped and turned to Jake, who was sitting against the wall with medical gel covering his wounded ribs. "Do you understand what you have done?" Peter asked, his voice tight with stress. "The agreement was simple. We accept their protection and trade in exchange for acknowledging their authority. Now we have humiliated their greatest warrior in front of his entire civilization. They could destroy Earth just to restore their honor." Jake looked up at the ambassador with tired eyes. Or they could respect us for the first time. The briefings said the Corvin admire strength above everything else. I showed them strength. You showed them a trick, Peter snapped back. One that will not work twice now that they have seen it. Lisa had been studying her datapad, reviewing footage of the fight from multiple angles. She looked up and shook her head. It was not a trick. Jake fought smart. He identified weaknesses and exploited them. He controlled the distance and pace of the engagement. He forced submission without killing. In Corvin culture, that actually shows more honor than just winning through killing. The door suddenly opened with a hiss of compressed air. 3 Corvin warriors entered, led by an older one whose scales had faded to gray with age. Deep scars covered his body, marking hundreds of battles survived. The humans tensed, but the elder's posture was not aggressive. He looked directly at Jake. "The human Jake Morrison will come with us," the elder said in rough English. "Alpha Commander Thrace requests your presence." Jake stood up despite Peter's protests. If this was going to be an execution, running would only make things worse. He followed the Corvin escort through corridors that were not built for humans. He had to duck under doorways and climb stairs that were made for much longer legs. Every step reminded him how small humanity was compared to these beings. They came to a private chamber that overlooked the arena. Thrace stood alone at the observation window with his back to the entrance. Medical dressings covered his body, showing white against his dark scales. He did not turn around when Jake entered the room. "Leave us," Thrace commanded. The guards left immediately without question and sealed the door behind them. For a long moment, neither spoke. Jake waited because he knew this was Thrace's moment to set the tone. Finally, the Alpha Commander turned around, and his golden eyes held something Jake had not seen before. It was genuine curiosity mixed with respect. "Explain your species to me," Thrace said directly. "You are physically weak by our standards. Your technology is centuries behind ours. By all reasonable measures, you should be prey. Yet you fought like a predator. How is this possible?" Jake thought carefully about his answer. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We are not the strongest or fastest creatures on our planet. But we are stubborn. We do not give up easily. We learned early in our evolution that intelligence can beat strength if you use it correctly." Thrace's hand went to his throat, where dark bruises were already forming. "You found weaknesses in my body that I did not know existed. You studied us before arriving here." "We studied everything we could find about your species," Jake confirmed. "That is what humans do. We learn. We adapt. We find ways to overcome obstacles." The Alpha Commander moved to a table where a container of something alcoholic sat beside 2 cups. He poured both cups full and offered one to Jake. The human accepted it, recognizing this as an important gesture. They drank in silence, the liquid burning down Jake's throat. "I have fought for 300 of your years," Thrace said eventually. "I have faced the strongest warriors of 40 different species across this sector of space. None of them fought the way you did today. Most species rely on their natural advantages, strength or speed or venom or mental powers. You relied on will and intelligence. This is uncommon in the galaxy." "Among the Corvin, maybe," Jake replied carefully. "But every human has to rely on those things. We spent our entire existence competing with predators stronger than us. We learned to think our way out of problems because we could not fight our way out." Thrace's lips pulled back to reveal rows of sharp teeth. It took Jake a moment to realize the alien was smiling. "Your species may be more dangerous than we first believed, but the Corvin respect dangerous species. We have no use for weak creatures that beg for mercy." The Alpha Commander moved to the window and gestured for Jake to join him. Below in the arena, workers were preparing something new. "My warriors are divided in their opinions," Thrace explained. "Some say you cheated and your victory was not honorable. Others say you fought with wisdom, which is the highest form of strength. The council will debate your fate for days." "What do you say?" Jake asked directly. Thrace turned to face him fully. "I say that any species capable of producing warriors like you deserves respect instead of slavery. I say humans should stand as allies instead of servants. But I am only one voice, even if I am alpha. The council may disagree with my assessment." Hope flickered in Jake's chest, but he kept his expression neutral. "What happens if the council disagrees?" "Then there will be more challenges," Thrace said, "and your people will need more warriors like you to face them." He paused, and his golden eyes seemed to look through Jake rather than at him. "But I do not think the council will be foolish enough to make enemies of a species that fights as intelligently as you do. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Captain Morrison. The Corvin Empire needs allies who will not break easily when tested by our enemies." The Alpha Commander extended his massive hand with the palm facing up. It was a gesture of equality in Corvin culture. Jake clasped it with both of his own hands, human and alien sealing something new between their species. "Tomorrow you will address the council," Thrace informed him. "Speak to them the way you spoke to me in the arena. Do not bow or apologize. Show them the same strength that made you refuse to kneel before me." Jake nodded firmly. "I can do that." "Good." Thrace moved toward the door but paused before opening it. "One more thing, human. When we fight together in the future, which I believe we will, I want you and warriors like you fighting beside my forces. The Corvin are strong, but we have grown comfortable over the centuries. You will make us remember what it means to be truly sharp and dangerous again." As Jake was escorted back to his quarters, his mind worked through all the possibilities. The fight had been about more than just survival. It had been about changing how an entire civilization viewed humanity. They had arrived as beggars hoping for mercy and protection. They would leave as something completely different. If they left at all, the council chamber was built to intimidate. It was carved from a single massive crystal that caught light from the twin suns and broke it into 1,000 burning points that filled the space. 12 Corvin elders sat in a semicircle on elevated thrones, each one representing a different military legion that had conquered a sector of space. They had ruled this empire for longer than human civilization had existed. They looked down at the small delegation from Earth with expressions that ranged from contempt to mild interest. Jake stood at the center of the chamber floor with Peter and Lisa flanking him. The ambassador had spent the entire night rehearsing speeches full of diplomatic language and careful apologies. Jake had spent the night reviewing everything Thrace had told him about Corvin culture and everything Lisa had learned about their military structure and psychology. Elder Crane was the oldest of the council. His scales had gone completely white with age, but his voice still carried the weight of countless battles. "Human Jake Morrison, you have committed a grave offense against this council and our empire. You challenged Alpha Commander Thrace without proper authorization, risking the complete destruction of your entire species for nothing but pride. Explain yourself before we pass final judgment on your people." Peter started to speak with his prepared diplomatic response, but Jake stepped forward and held up his hand to silence the ambassador. This was not a moment for careful diplomacy. This was a moment for plain truth. "I committed no offense," Jake said clearly, his voice amplified by the chamber's strange acoustics. "I responded to a threat with appropriate strength. You summoned us here to kneel and accept subjugation. You wanted us to become another servile species in your empire. I refuse that fate because humans do not kneel to threats or bullies." Angry growls echoed through the chamber. Several elders leaned forward in their thrones with their eyes blazing. Elder Sora, commander of the 3rd Legion, slammed her massive fist on the arm of her throne hard enough to crack the stone. "This is pure arrogance. Your species controls only 3 planets. We control 3,000 worlds. You have been traveling in space for mere decades. We have ruled for thousands of years. You should be grateful we offered vassalage instead of complete extinction." "Why should we be grateful?" Jake challenged directly. "Because you are older? Because you are bigger and stronger? Those things do not make you better than us. They just make you comfortable and lazy." The chamber erupted into chaos. Corvan warriors lining the walls roared in outrage at the insult. But Elder Crane raised one hand and silence fell instantly across the entire space. The ancient warrior studied Jake with eyes that had watched entire civilizations rise and fall over centuries. "Explain what you mean by that statement," Crane commanded in a voice that expected immediate obedience. Jake took a breath. This was the moment when everything would be decided. "You have spent centuries conquering weak species and absorbing them into your empire. You have crushed anyone who tried to resist your rule. For 1,000 years, you have faced no real challenges to your power. You have become an empire of administrators and politicians instead of warriors. Thrace told me the Corvan respect strength above everything else, but I think you have forgotten what real strength actually looks like." "And you believe you can teach us?" Elder Torek asked mockingly. He was the youngest member of the council. "You come from a species that can barely leave its own solar system, and you think you can lecture us about strength?" "Yes," Jake said simply and directly, "because we still remember what it means to fight for survival every single day. Every predator on our home planet was stronger and faster than us. Our environment tried to kill us constantly. We had no natural weapons or armor or venom. We survived purely through intelligence and adaptability and stubborn refusal to give up. Those traits made us dangerous despite our physical weakness." Thrace entered the chamber without being summoned. His presence commanded immediate attention from everyone present. He walked directly to stand beside the human delegation, making a clear statement of his position that sent murmurs through the assembled Corvan warriors. "The human speaks the truth," Thrace declared loudly. "I have fought warriors from across this entire sector of space. Most of them rely purely on brute strength or natural advantages given by their biology. This human defeated me through strategy and tactics. He exploited weaknesses I did not even know existed in my own body. He showed me that the Corvan military has become predictable and set in our ways." Elder Crane leaned back in his throne with an unreadable expression on his ancient face. "Even if we accept that your words have some merit, why should we offer alliance to a species as weak as yours? What exactly do you bring to our empire besides clever words and one lucky victory?" Lisa stepped forward before Jake could respond. She activated her data pad, and holographic displays suddenly filled the chamber with information. "May I present evidence to support our position, honored elders?" At Crane's slight nod, she continued speaking. "We have analyzed your military engagements over the past century using publicly available records. In 73% of your conflicts, you relied purely on overwhelming force and direct frontal assault. Your tactics have not evolved significantly in 200 years of warfare. You win battles through superior numbers and better technology, not through tactical innovation or strategic thinking." She pulled up tactical displays showing various battles. "Now observe Earth's military history. We have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We have developed tactics and strategies for every possible scenario you can imagine. Ambush warfare, siege tactics, guerrilla operations, naval combat, air superiority doctrine, asymmetric warfare approaches. We have been forced to innovate constantly because we could never rely on being the strongest force in any engagement." The displays showed human conflicts throughout history. The tactics evolved from ancient spear formations to modern combined arms operations. Several elders leaned forward with genuine interest, now showing on their faces. "You see military threats in terms of conventional force projection," Lisa continued. "We see every conflict as a problem to be solved through creative thinking. You have superior technology and physical strength, but we have tactical creativity and adaptability that your empire has lost over centuries of easy victories. An alliance between our species would give you something your empire desperately needs right now: unpredictability. Strategic innovation, the ability to adapt quickly to unexpected situations. Peter finally found his moment to contribute. And we need what you have: protection from hostile species, advanced technology, access to resources. This does not have to be about domination and submission. It can be a genuine partnership where both species benefit from each other's strengths. Elder Crane made a gesture, and the holograms vanished instantly. The council members talked among themselves in low voices, debating in their native language that the humans could not understand. Jake waited with his heart pounding hard in his chest. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment and this decision. Finally, Crane spoke again. The council is divided on this matter. Some members see merit in your arguments. Others see only a dangerous species that refuses to show proper respect to its superiors. We have decided to test your claims about human tactical superiority. You will demonstrate these tactics you claim are better than ours. How exactly? Jake asked carefully. Thrace answered with a gleam in his golden eyes that suggested he was enjoying this. War games. Human warriors against Corvan warriors in simulated combat scenarios. If you can prove your tactical capabilities actually exceed our own, the Council will grant full alliance status to Earth. If you fail to prove this, Earth accepts vassalage for 5 generations. Do you accept these terms? Jake looked at Peter, who appeared terrified but resigned. He looked at Lisa, who nodded slowly. Jake turned back to face the council with determination. We accept your challenge, but I have one condition of my own. The chamber went completely silent. Several elders looked ready to order immediate execution for the presumption of a human making demands. Crane simply raised one eye ridge with something that might have been amusement. A human making conditions to the Corvan Council. This should be very interesting to hear. Jake met the ancient elder's gaze without flinching. If we win these war games, Earth receives not just alliance status but a position on this council, a voice in how the Empire operates going forward. Full partnership with equal say, not junior membership where we follow orders. Absolutely impossible, Elder Sora snapped immediately. The Council has been 12 members since the Empire's founding thousands of years ago. We do not add seats for upstart species who have barely left their home system. Then make it 13 members, Jake countered firmly. You say you want tactical innovation and unpredictability. Having a human perspective in your strategic planning would provide exactly that. We would bring our different way of thinking to your entire military structure, not just to our own small forces. Thrace's expression shifted to something like approval and pride. The other elders argued among themselves much more intensely now. Finally, Crane spoke again. If your human forces can actually defeat our warriors in fair war games, we will seriously consider this unprecedented request. But understand this clearly, Jake Morrison. We will not make this challenge easy for you. You will face our absolute best warriors. If you lose, Earth becomes a vassal state under our complete control for 5 generations instead of 1. Do you still accept these terms? The stakes had just become enormous and terrifying. But Jake saw in Crane's ancient eyes what this really was, a test of courage as much as capability. The Corvan wanted to see if humans would risk everything when truly challenged. We accept completely, Jake said with firm confidence. Then prepare your warriors well, Crane commanded. You have 10 of your Earth days. Choose your best fighters and plan your strategies carefully. In 10 days, you will prove whether humanity deserves to stand beside the Corvan Empire as equals or beneath it as servants for generations to come. 10 days passed in a blur of constant activity. Jake selected 20 Marines from the Horizon's Edge crew and embassy security forces. They were not the biggest or strongest humans, but they were smart and adaptable and willing to learn new approaches. He drilled them constantly in guerrilla tactics and asymmetric warfare that the Corvan had never encountered before. The proving grounds were massive, stretching across 50 kilometers of harsh terrain. Mountains, dense forests, and ruins of an ancient city that had been built specifically for combat training. Above the battlefield, thousands of Corvan observers filled stadium seating that surrounded the entire arena. Every major military leader in the Empire had come to witness what they expected would be a brief demonstration of their superiority. Jake stood with his team of 20 humans. They looked incredibly small compared to the 50 Corvan warriors Thrace had assembled on the opposite side of the field. The odds were deliberately stacked against the humans. Fewer numbers, lighter equipment, unfamiliar terrain. Lisa finished her final equipment check. Neural communication link is active and functioning. Everyone's tactical feed is properly synchronized. We are as ready as we can possibly be. Sergeant Nick Hayes was a veteran of frontier conflicts on Mars and Europa. He surveyed the terrain with a practiced and experienced eye. We cannot win this through direct engagement. Those Corvan warriors will tear us apart in straight combat. We need to force them to fight on our terms, not theirs. That is exactly the plan, Jake confirmed. He had spent 10 days drilling these Marines in tactics the Corvan Empire had not seen in centuries: hit and run attacks, ambush from concealment, psychological warfare, divide and conquer, everything humanity had learned from fighting itself for thousands of years. Elder Crane's voice boomed across the arena through massive speakers. The terms are simple and clear. Capture the enemy's flag or eliminate all enemy forces completely. Weapons are set to non-lethal but will register eliminations and cause real pain. Medical teams stand ready for any injuries. The engagement begins when the horn sounds. The horn sounded. A deep, resonant note that rolled across the landscape like thunder. The Corvan forces immediately began advancing in standard military formation. 3 squads of warriors moving forward with textbook precision. They expected the humans to either charge forward to meet them or establish a defensive position to hold. They were completely wrong. Jake's forces had already scattered before the horn even finished sounding. They had identified key positions throughout the terrain during their preparation days: sniper nests hidden in the ruins, ambush points concealed in the forest, observation posts in the mountains. The humans had no intention of meeting the Corvan in open battle. The first Corvan squad entered the ruins carefully with weapons ready and scanning for human forces. They found nothing. Then Private Chen, positioned on a third-floor ledge, triggered the first surprise. A cascade of rubble that Jake's team had carefully rigged to collapse. 3 Corvan warriors went down hard under the debris. Their armor's elimination sensors registered them as casualties. Before the others could react properly, 2 human fire teams opened concentrated fire from concealed positions. They targeted knee joints and exposed neck areas, the weak points Lisa had identified through careful study. 4 more Corvan dropped with their sensors flashing red elimination signals. The remaining warriors returned fire, but the humans had already retreated through pre-planned escape routes. In the observation booth, Elder Sora leaned forward with surprise. They are not fighting conventionally. They are using harassment tactics. They are being smart and adapting to their disadvantages, Thrace observed, his eyes tracking human movements on the tactical display. They know they cannot win through strength, so they are using terrain and mobility to their advantage. Classic guerrilla doctrine. The Corvan forces regrouped and adapted, breaking into smaller and more mobile units. But the humans had anticipated this response. Sergeant Hayes' squad had planted false trails and sensor decoys throughout the forest. Half the Corvan forces wasted precious time chasing phantom contacts while the humans repositioned for their next strikes. In the mountains, Jake led a team along narrow ridgelines that the heavier Corvan could not safely traverse. They reached an overlook position, giving clear sight lines to the enemy flag station. But instead of attacking directly, Jake made a different tactical call. All teams, execute Diversion Plan Alpha now. Across the battlefield, human forces launched simultaneous attacks on 3 different Corvin positions. None of them were the flag station. The Corvin commanders, increasingly frustrated by the humans' hit-and-run tactics, took the bait completely. They consolidated their remaining forces to crush what they interpreted as a desperate final assault, which left the flag station defended by only 5 warriors. Jake's team descended from the mountains like a hammer falling. They had saved their heaviest weapons for this critical moment. EMP grenades that scrambled Corvin armor sensors, flash devices that overwhelmed their sensitive optics, smoke grenades that turned the immediate area into complete confusion. In the chaos, 3 Marines reached the flag station. Chen, Hayes, and Corporal Linda Moore fought through the disoriented defenders with brutal efficiency. They used close-quarters combat techniques that negated the Corvin strength advantage. Hayes took down 1 warrior with a joint lock that would have been impossible against a fully aware opponent. Moore used her smaller size to slip under another's guard, her stun weapon finding the nerve cluster that dropped him instantly. Chen grabbed the flag and raised it high. The horn sounded 3 times, the signal of complete victory. The arena fell into shocked silence. 50 Corvin warriors defeated by 20 humans. Every observer had just watched their fundamental assumptions about warfare get systematically dismantled. Elder Crane stood slowly in the observation booth. The council has seen enough evidence. We will deliberate on our decision now. 3 hours of waiting felt like 3 years. Finally, the humans were summoned back to the council chamber. The elders sat in their thrones with carefully neutral expressions. Elder Crane rose to speak. The council has reached our final decision. The humans fought with intelligence and tactical innovation we have not encountered in centuries of warfare. You exposed serious weaknesses in Corvin military doctrine that we did not know existed. This demonstration proves your species has significant value beyond simple servitude. Jake held his breath, waiting. Therefore, Crane continued, we grant Earth full alliance status within the Corvin Empire. Your species will be recognized as independent, with complete trading rights and military protection. Additionally, we accept your proposal for council membership. A 13th seat will be created. Earth will have an equal voice in the Empire's strategic decisions going forward. Jake simply nodded, accepting the victory as if he had never doubted the outcome.